Jaya Gopidananda Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Yasodhanandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krsna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kasyanubhavasya deva vitmahe tavangrirena sparasadikara yatvanchayasi lalana chanat tapo vihaya kaman suchiram dritavrata. O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya has attained this great opportunity of being touched by the dust of your lotus feet. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and taking austere vows. Sanaka pristam natsa sarva bhumam na paramishcham narasi dipatyam na yoga siddhira punarbhavam va vachanti yat padaraja prapana. Those who have attained the dust of your lotus feet never hanker for the kingship of heaven, limitless sovereignty, the position of Brahman, or rulership over the earth. They are not interested even in the perfection of yoga or in liberation itself. Then text 38. Tat isanata padura pamanyai Tamo jani krodha vasopya hisa Sansara chakre brahmata saririno Yat ichatasyat vibhava samaksha Tadesanapadurapamanyas Tamo jani krodha vasopya hisaha Samsara chakre brahmata saririno Yadichatasyat vibhava samaksaha. Tade sanatapa durapamanyaya. Tamo jani krodha vasupiyasisaha. Samsara chakre brahmata saririno. Yadichatasyat vibhava samakshaha.
Tareshanatha padurapamanyay. Tamo janih krodha vasopyahishaha. Samsara chakre bhramata sharirino. Yadichatasyat vibhava samakshaha.
Shanata padurapam aniyai. Tamo jani krodha vasopyahisaha. Samsara chakre brahmata sharirino. Yadichatasyat vibhava samakshaha.
Shanatapadurapam anyay. Tamo jani krodha vasopyahisaha. Samsara chakre brahmatak sharirino. Yati chidakshyat vibhavak samakshaha.
Ladies, that Isaha Diskaliya Nata O Lord Apa has achieved Durapam difficult to achieve Anyay by others Tamahajani who was born in the mode of ignorance Krudavasaha who was under the sway of anger Api even Ahisha the king of serpents Sansara Chakre within the the cycle of material existence. Brahmata, wandering. Saririna, for the embodied living entity. Yad, by which dust of your lotus feet. Ichata, who has material desires. Sya, manifest. Vibhava, all opulences. Samaksha, before his eyes. Translation. O Lord, although this Kaliya, the king of the serpents, has taken birth in the mode of ignorance and is controlled by anger, he has achieved that which is difficult for others to achieve. Embodied souls who are full of desires and are thus wandering in the cycle of birth and death can have all benedictions manifested before their eyes simply by receiving the dust of your lotus feet. Purport. It is very rare for a conditioned soul to free himself from the contamination of illusion and thus become established in the perfect consciousness of the absolute truth. And yet this benediction was achieved by the serpent Kaliya, because the Lord personally danced upon the serpent's hoods with his lotus feet. Although we conditioned souls may not receive the mercy of having the Lord dance on our head, we can receive the dust of the lotus feet of the Absolute through the Lord's representative, the bona fide spiritual master, and thus go back home, back to Godhead, and forever freed from the misery and ignorance of the mundane universe. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Shakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Siguro Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghanatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sivisakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Visavana Sutadevi Pranamani Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyacha Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here the point is made that Kaliya, the king of the serpent, who had taken his birth in the mode of ignorance and being controlled by anger, somehow or other received the mercy of the Lord that very few would have achieved. And so it raises the question, how? I read the same question in the Garga Samhita. The Garga Samhita, written by or spoken by Garga Muni and considered bona fide by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And there it describes the last life of Kaliya. And I thought it's interesting to have a look at Kaliya's last life. It said in his last life, he was a sage named Vedasira, and he was in charge of an ashram. And one day, another sage came to stay in that ashram, and he wasn't received very well. Vedasira was really saying, no, there's no place, right? There's no place here. And so the sage said, what is this? You are receiving me with anger and you are hissing like a snake? You are hissing like a snake. Become a snake. Oh, then Vedasira said, for possibly a minor transgression in welcoming you, right? You are cursing me in such a heavy way. This is not appropriate speaking for a sage. What kind of sage are you? You are speaking like a crow. Be a crow. So it was snake and crow. It said then the Supreme Lord appeared, and the Supreme Lord, he gave both of them some benedictions. He said, don't worry. He said to the crow sage, you'll be a crow. There's nothing we can do about that. But you will become a crow that will remember spiritual knowledge. And so that crow became the famous crow Busandi. That crow Busandi is a very famous crow who was a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, and who would sit there on a branch and all day just and who was very realized in transcendental knowledge, and as such who was a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra. Whereas Kaliya would get the benediction of the dust of the feet of the Lord on his head. So, okay, Garga Samhita shed some light on that matter. And maybe on a deeper level, it is also interesting that a sage became a snake. Now one can give an easy explanation, and the easy explanation is it was all the plan of the Lord, and so on. And then end of story. Right? But that would be a bit quick. So there was something in the sage Vedasira, that made him eligible to go through this whole experience. He needed to go through this for his purification. And this is the interesting part, I think, where we can zoom in on for a moment. Because we all have to go through our purification. We can dress up nicely, like Vaishnavas, put the beads, put the dress, do the haircut, and speak the appropriate language. Right? That we can all do. The external guise of Vaishnava we can take. But then internally there are so many things in our nature that we encounter, and that others also encounter. And even what doesn't become apparent, the Supreme Lord is fully aware of every single impurity in our nature and within our heart. We see descriptions, for example, Prahlad, who is touched by the lotus hand of Lord Nrsimhadev and then is purified from the contamination from his previous birth in a family of Daityas. And you go, Prahlad, isn't it? Like, if Prahlad needs to be purified, then what about us? So it definitely calls the question. The sage, Vedasira, had obviously developed a mood of being the proprietor of his ashram. In fact, the visiting sage told him, he said, this is not your ashram. This ashram belongs to Mahavishnu. Right? It belongs to Mahavishnu. You should remember that. You're not the owner of this ashram. And that is a fact that we always remember. We are caretakers. Caretakers on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is really the proprietor. So to recognize the proprietorship of the Supreme Lord is very, very important, because that also means that the purpose of everything becomes defined. Because when the Lord is the proprietor, then the purpose of everything is the purpose of the Lord. And that is not our purpose. Then we don't look at this world as to what am I going to do with it. Oh, world, oh world, oh world, at my fingertips. What shall I do with you? No. What is the purpose of the Lord? So this is Vaishnava. Vaishnavas is in every situation, considering like that. What is the purpose of the Lord in this situation? What is the purpose of my existence? For what did I take birth? For my own sinful desires. That's obvious. No. But now, somehow or other, I received the grace of the Lord and His representatives, and so I'm in the community of Vaishnavas. Now, what is my role? What am I meant to do in this? What am I meant to contribute? Everyone has a unique role. Everyone has some unique empowerment. Every living being has some unique empowerment. And everyone can do something unique. And what is our role? What are we meant to contribute to this movement? The greater purpose of the Supreme Lord is very clear. And everyone, and Vaishnava means living with that knowledge, carrying it like a jewel on the head. Vedasira means one who carries the Vedas like a jewel on the head, like a great treasure. We are carrying the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on our head. And he is Suridam Sarvadehinam. He is the well-wisher of all embodied living beings. So therefore, the Supreme Lord is trying to benedict every living being. So our position is to somehow or other facilitate that, to be a via media of benedictions. Yes. Prior to Krishna consciousness, I had an interest in music, right? And I spent many hours experimenting on musical instruments and so on. But after a while, I realized that I was meant to be a via media of something, that I was meant to, that through me, I would put some influence in the world by doing this, and that I was meant to represent something, and that I was meant to make music that would elevate people. There's all kinds of music in the world, but if it's not used as a tool to elevate people, then what's the point of it? What's the point of it? Then it is decoration of a dead body. Srila Prabhupada is speaking about this. Decoration of a dead body. You can make it very beautiful, everything. Little powder, the cream, and do up the eyebrows, eyelashes, but it's a dead body. So what's the point in that? A lot of makeup on a dead body. Yeah. Decoration of a dead body. If the substance is not there, so this whole point is he was a sage who was too much absorbed in the external, who was gradually beginning to claim proprietorship over his ashram, and as a result became protective of his arrangement, my nice little cubicle, and here this person is coming in to disturb my nice little transcendental cubicle, right? And and that's my spiritual life, a nice little transcendental cubicle, right? I've created like a little box, my little Krishna box, and that's where I live. That's mine. Oh, yeah. And no one in. This sort of like incubated Krishna consciousness, right? That is not Krishna consciousness. We saw Srila Prabhupada. Right? Srila Prabhupada was in New York and saying, I was staying in Vrindavan. I was staying in Vrindavan. I came to this hellish place. People like, New York, hellish place. Yes, I was in such a nice place, Vrindavan. And yes, Prabhupada was in such a nice place, Vrindavan. Krishna. Everywhere Krishna, especially in the time Prabhupada stayed there, Vrindavan was very, very simple and, not so built up like today, and not so much Western influence, just everywhere, ashrams, temples, people chanting. I remember when I lived in Vrindavan in between 1978 and 84, that at that time Vrindavan was very simple. And sometimes I would just take a random walk, not a parikrama, just a walk. But then if I would take a walk, then in the late afternoon, in every house there was kirtan. People were always doing kirtan at home. That was the normal thing to do. Later, that was replaced by television. Yeah. But, so how nice Vrindavan was. But Prabhupada left that nice spiritual atmosphere to go to New York, which was an austere place, right? And New York is the kind of place, when you go to New York, you kind of should know where you're going to stay. If you don't know where you're going to stay in New York, and you just rock up, it's not the right thing to do. It's a big city, and you better know where you're going, what time of the day, and where you're going to stay. Yeah, that's New York, NYC. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the way it is. And Prabhupada just landed there, and just sort of like went with the flow and stayed on some loft, and there's a description how Prabhupada is on this loft with this Robert, and that Prabhupada was on the loft. This is before Robert went crazy, leaving that for what it is. And there's this journalist who is coming to meet Prabhupada. Now he's read about Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta, and he comes to interview him. So he's done a little homework, and he comes on the loft and he sees all these people there, and then on the other side of the loft there is this sort of Buddha-like personality, a bit effulgent and so on, and you think, okay. And Buddha-like personality, whatever. And the journalist walks across and says, Swami Bhaktivedanta, I presume, as if it's Sten. And then Prabhupada said, yes. And then he says, the journalist looks and said, what are all these people doing here? And Prabhupada said, I don't know. And they don't know either. And that's like, but that's where he was. That's austere, right? It's very romantic. I'm going to preach, across the ocean, and then be with all these people who don't know what they're doing, and so on. Intense. So Prabhupada took all that austerity. One morning, early morning, Prabhupada was translating. By then he had an apartment. There was the Matchless Gift store, and there was an apartment upstairs. And then there was in the middle, very early, like before people would get up, there was this banging on the door, in the corridor, and then Prabhupada opened the door, and then this girl, she just came into his apartment. And the standard is, a sannyasi cannot be alone with a lady in any enclosed space, any private space. So the girl was there, and he couldn't touch the girl, couldn't throw her out. So he just stepped out. Right? He just stepped out, and then she also stepped out and locked the door. And then he was locked out of the apartment. And she called out, Bahola, right? Which is the we know now is the prophet of the Baha'i faith. But anyway, she was on drugs, and Prabhupada considered it like the darkest and deepest ignorance. But Prabhupada's purpose was the purpose of the Lord, all along. The purpose of the Lord. It is here where the sage Vedasira failed. Although externally he took the dress and the ways of a transcendentalist and was practicing the sadhana, everything, he was somehow or other not getting to the core of it, not to the essence of it. He hadn't embraced the purpose of the Lord. He had his own purpose to become a spiritual personality. But that's not enough. We have to embrace the purpose of the Lord. We are meant to be a via media, meant to simply be an instrument of the desire of the Lord. And that self-centered mentality, which then stayed, that was still the same as in the case of any materialist who is also self-centered. The materialist is just thinking, I and mine. Yeah? I have all my attributes, my personality, I have my nature, I have my astrology, I have my possessions, oh yes, I have my degrees, yes. I have an aristocratic birth also. And I happen to be very beautiful. So even my glasses are nice. So like this, the materialist is self-centered. And this self-centeredness is the material disease. It is the root cause of material existence. It is the disease that is deeply rooted within the heart of the living being, and that makes us take birth after birth after birth after birth in this material world to try it one more time. Just One more time. It didn't work out so well this life, but have another shot at it. Yeah. So, the sage, due to self-centeredness, was having fertile ground for lust and envy to develop. That is the nature. When self-centeredness is there, then itcha dvesa samuttena dvandamahin tabharata, then this itch and dves will develop. This self-centeredness which leads to desire and hate. So, I hate sages that come to disturb me in my bhajan. I hate them. Oh, hate. There's no room for such hate. No. Yeah. So, I don't like people. That's better than saying hate. Okay. Hate, of course, is not in a Vaishnava dictionary. No, I don't hate. I don't hate anyone. There's just a few things I don't like. Let's see the difference. Right? I don't like, yes. I don't like people that get up at an ungodly hour and make noise. I don't like so many things. I don't like people that hang their wet socks over my bunk bed. Or no, I don't know what it is, but there's so much like and dislike. And so we catch ourselves, right? We catch ourselves that we do have these things, likes and dislikes, also amongst Vaishnavas. And that we sometimes look upon a Vaishnava and think, I don't like, and fill in the blanks, right? So can we rise to a broader platform? It's just like, yes, okay, this. What do you do? What do we do when we see false ego in another Vaishnava? Oh God, look at that. False ego. Come on, you're a Vaishnava, how can you have any? False ego. Look at it. Big as an elephant. Right? Aren't you ashamed to hold on to such conditioning? Yeah? Like this. You can think. Or are we simply going to appreciate that this person is so fortunate, so fortunate. When we are reading this verse today, it said that although this Kaliya, the king of the serpents, has taken birth in the mode of ignorance and is controlled by anger, he has achieved that which is difficult for others to achieve. Embodied souls who are full of desires and are thus wandering in the cycle of birth and death can have all benedictions manifested before their eyes simply by receiving the dust of your lotus feet. How did he get the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord? So everyone, every single one has received the mercy of the Lord through disciplic succession in a very concentrated form. One year in Mayapur, in Vrindavan, at the time of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day, every year there's a big gathering, of course, of senior devotees, disciples of Srila Prabhupada and many other devotees, and especially the senior devotees, they speak. And so one year, Guru Kripa Prabhu, who did so much in the early days for pushing on this movement and making Vrindavan a big success. Guru Kripa says, he says, when Prabhupada appeared, it was just like lightning. It was very intense. It was very intense and very short. He said for just some time, very intense association, very concentrated Krishna consciousness, and then it was over. It was like, it was interesting. I thought it was, those were Prabhupada's close men who just were there at that time on the cutting edge with Prabhupada, and then it was over. And then it was living on memories. But yes, that intensity of Krishna consciousness that Prabhupada brought, that is what we got. We got it. We got a very... where do you get such a clear focus as in this movement? Prabhupada made it so clear what the focus is, so clear. So it's not that we don't know. A lot of people in the world, the issue is sort of, what is it? You know, the meter is not quite clear on the goal. It moves here, there, somewhere. Where is it? What is it? But in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada made that so clear. We know what is the goal. That's not the difficulty. The difficulty is that we don't want to surrender to it. It is amazing how much one can hold back. Even when we went so far, we dress up like this, we took on so many ways that were so different from what we were doing before, doing all that, and it's still within this whole external lifestyle, we hold on to our self-centeredness. No? And therefore, the potential to develop an envious mentality and a lusty mentality is there. That potential is there because we are holding on to our self-centeredness. And that is really the issue. Therefore, the solution is to really take up the purpose of Sankirtan. To really take up the mood of being an instrument of mercy. That's the only way. Only then, it is Sankirtan, it is sharing this pure transcendental mercy with others where we forget ourselves, where we have to put ourselves aside. And of course, we're going in the beginning, we go out on Sankirtan and we don't forget ourselves. We just are very self-conscious. Satsarup Maharaj writes a book about compassion, and he writes an interesting thing. In the beginning of the book he says, actually I don't have any compassion, and if I have any compassion, I feel more compassion for myself than for others. It's sort of, well, I could relate to it, you know. I thought, yeah, there's some point here. So, this spirit of just becoming part of a mission to increase the glorification of Krishna, to increase transcendental knowledge, to increase devotional service in the world, that is our business. And how you're going to do it, that depends. Some are on the street, some are writing, some are singing, some are cooking. Like Kurma is an example of a cook, right? Who turned his cooking into preaching. Yeah? First of all, he was a really good cook, but a very intense cook. I don't know if you ever cooked with Kurma. I did. And cooking with Kurma, you know, is like everything has 11,000 volts, right? If it's not 100% right, you know, then it's like So it's like everything is like, if it says 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. Time, temperature, everything is controlled. Very, very precise, super precise. It's nothing like take some spice and just chuck it in. No. It's the right quantity, etc. Really, really serious cooking. But then everything is like extraordinary. Even ordinary preps taste like. In Melbourne, when Kurma had cooked, right, there was a rule that no one, after it was offered to the deities, no one could touch the Mahaprasada. Everyone knew it. Don't dare to go near it. Kurma himself will come and distribute it. Everyone was waiting. Then Kurma would come and distribute it. And he had cooked some extra, this, that, and so many devotees, and this feast, and everything was just delicious, really delicious. So Kurma was so good that he started doing cooking courses, and they were also very strict. And next he got a contract with an American TV station. And his cooking courses became huge. And he was funny also. So he became an entertaining TV personality, but all through his cooking. And he just turned cooking into big preaching. And that was really wonderful because, you know, it's like, because he had that desire. He had the desire to do, not only to cook, but to share this transcendental mercy with others. And actually made, in so many ways, a big contribution. So, somehow or other, to become selfless and to embrace the purpose of the Lord may save us from this propensity to fall prey to lust and envy, which is what happened to Vedasira and the rest of the story. We know. Any questions or comments?
I've got a little Krishna conscious cubicle, and I don't like people riffraff coming in and hanging their socks, because I can't get on with my Krishna consciousness. So it's nice in theory that I open the whole place up and let the whole world come in, but then it's often to the detriment of my own Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, as long as we can have our cubicle, as long as we come out of our cubicle to do something to share Krishna consciousness. The cubicle, I also don't let people hang their socks in my cubicle. Yeah. Unless you would want to hang your socks anytime. Your socks I will take, of course. Once you leave the room and your socks are hanging there, then you wouldn't want to know what I'm going to do with your socks. That's the thing, you know. It's like, it depends how you see the socks of the Vaishnavas. Right? Some people, they say, oh, yeah, I'll take the socks. Yeah, sure. Hang them there, yeah. So, yeah. But fair enough. So the principle of keeping a certain amount of privacy and sanity in one's own environment is understandable. So we can sympathize a little bit with Vedasira, but what are we going to do? At least as a community, right? It's not Vedic to turn eligible guests away. Yeah? So if there's a devotee coming and so, no place. But I've traveled 1,000 kilometers. Sorry, there's no space. It's full. It's full. That's not entirely the right spirit either. Doesn't mean that we're going to put him with an elderly, gentle Vaishnava. We just tell the brahmacharis to move over. Move over and squeeze another one in somehow. That spirit of adjusting to welcome other Vaishnavas, that's something in India you will find so much. You know what I'm saying? In the culture of India, people are less about privacy. The West is like, you know,
Not interested.
it's like, whereas in India it's like, you know, Atiti Bhagavan, right? Atiti Bhagavan is the thing that any guest that has come, it might be the Supreme Personality of Godhead in disguise. So in case, therefore you have to always treat every guest as if they are God. Yeah, every guest. That's the Atiti Bhagavan principle. And it's not just lip service. I mean, people really do. They turn over their whole house. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you know, we were in Dhaka and like, you know, it's just like, yeah, take the flat. Yeah, sure. We got the flat, you know. Of course, at one point, the family that actually lived in the flat, they just moved back in with us. And then they were all in the flat. And, you know, and there was this German devotee, you know, with me. And it's 11 o'clock at night, and the Bangladeshis are like, you know, just about to have some rice, you know, and some sabjis. And the German devotee is like, well, are we going to sleep? Yeah? Are we going to sleep somewhere? You know, it's like 11 o'clock. And he said, oh, you want to sleep? Go sleep. He said, put him in a corner in the room, just go sleep. And then, oh gosh, next morning at 3:30, they were blowing conch shells to have a Mongol Arctic in the house at 3:30. I think that was to show off to the Swami. Swami was impressed. Yeah. But this Atiti Bhagavan principle, right, is something that is deeply ingrained in the culture of India, and it's there in the Vedas. So we can think about that. So if anyone has any socks, no problem. Especially Prahlad's socks, since you're my neighbor. In my room, socks dry very well. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Vasudeva and Devaki, they were in the previous life soliciting for Krishna as their child. So these two sages, they were meditating. So wasn't that somewhere written that they were also like meditating on being part of Krishna's pastimes?
No, it's not mentioned.
Oh.
No. It doesn't look like it from the Garga Samhita story. From the Garga Samhita story, it looks like obviously they were sages, and they were great sages because the Supreme Lord appeared, but it doesn't specifically mention that they had a sadhana to appear in the pastimes of the Lord. One of the sages said that the ashram was the property of Mahavishnu. So even if they had the focus on Krishna, that's also apparently not the case. But somehow or other they got the mercy. Krishna appeared. The Lord appeared. That may have been Lord Vishnu who appeared and told them that, you know, you will get the dust on my head, and the other one became a crow in round lila. But nothing mentioned.
So it was like the other way around, that Vishnu was canvassing, or Krishna, for people who play a part in his pastimes, isn't it?
Yeah. If we look at it from a more philosophical point of view, you have sadhana siddha, kripa siddha, nitya siddha. Well, nitya siddha is some living being who was already liberated, came from the spiritual world, but otherwise sadhana siddha or kripa siddha. So sadhana siddha, a devotee who by his own endeavors comes to perfection, or kripa siddha, a devotee who becomes perfect by mercy. And kripa siddha can be mercy of the Lord or kripa of the devotee, pure devotee. So it may be a case of kripa siddha.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. I had two questions. One was about this incubated space, incubated Krishna consciousness that you spoke about. And very often as young practitioners we hear about how Krishna consciousness is a sensitive and individual process. And yeah, on a personal level I have this habit or this tendency to have this incubation, in the sense this is how I want to go about the whole day, these are my priorities. And then if you move, or if a devotee, or if you are in touch with a devotee with a different mood, you do feel that that is being shaken to an extent. But at the same time, Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that we should be open to taking some risk for Krishna. And then I'm just trying to understand, as a young practitioner, how do we get this balance of allowing these exchanges and thoughts, but at the same time maintaining what we see as a level of sadhana?
We are not independent in spiritual life. We are always in the association of the Vaishnavas, and the Vaishnavas, they will provide that balance by their association, by their advice, by their judgment, by their guidance. When we are young devotees, we may get more guidance. When we are older, we may get more advice, we seek more advice. But it's in the community of Vaishnavas that such things will be balanced. It's in community. Like the Pandavas are an interesting community because they're all pure devotees. Yeah? But still, Bhima needed to be balanced, for example, regularly, because he had a bit of a fiery nature. Yudhisthira was the most balanced of all. He was the leader, like that. So in a community, we are being balanced by guidance of others. That's the solution. But talking about balance, the goal of life is not to be balanced. The goal of life is to do something for Krishna, to take some risk, to be bold. Prabhupada was bold, very bold. He really did something. He didn't just, live a balanced life in the holy Dham. Prabhupada went on a rocking boat. So sometimes we have to rock the boat. Yeah, so Radhadesh is nice, and now is the pandemic and all that, so we can sit here, but we also have to think of what can we do to preach Krishna consciousness, to share Krishna consciousness from here. Very much so. And there's different ways. One way is to make a very strong community. The last time I was talking about this old festival that used to go on here at the end of the year, and the glorification of all the Vaishnavas, how nice it was and so on. And then it's like, well now, then Nikunjavasini Mataji, she mentioned that now maybe the new thing that's really come up is the Nirjal Ekadasi, where everyone chants 64 rounds. Well, get your beat back ready, you know, start like flexing your muscles, devotees, because this is what a community needs. Otherwise it's just a castle where people live and, you know, eat vegetables, right? Because we're all vegetarian, right? But we are supposed to do more than just eat vegetables. So okay, let's have some real spiritual substance in the community. Because then the people are already coming. Then when there's powerful spiritual energy, then from Radhadesh, then Radhadesh will really become like a hub, you know, where all kinds of people come because it's spiritually very potent. You can see like the Mallows, what it attracted. It's impressive in the middle. I mean, the Mallows really is like it's the top in the kirtan world. It's the number one for now. So Radhadesh needs that kind of concentrated efforts, and maybe then we are getting out of our comfort zone, to call the cubicle comfort zone. A little stretching.
Thank you, Maharaj.
No, you get only one first. Otherwise it becomes a monologue between you and me. That's also nice.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for your wonderful class. Maharaj, when you spoke about, guests coming to your place, especially devotees.
Titi Bhagavan.
Yes. Then I was thinking about what happens in Amsterdam very much, because they don't have an ashram, is that very often, so many devotees come with their luggages and they didn't arrange hotel stays, and the only thing we could do then is try to find places amongst devotees, but in Amsterdam they're not so much willing or able or whatever to host devotees. So, and finally we said, okay, I'm so sorry, you have to go to a budget hotel, and it's the only thing we can do for you is a budget hotel. And the logical is like, if you go somewhere, devotee or not, you inquire about the facilities. So is that bad that we are ultimately sending them to a budget hotel because they didn't arrange facilities, or the devotees are not willing, not able? So this very often happens in Amsterdam these days. What's your opinion about this?
We're talking about principle and application. And there's a difference between the two. The principle is that we should somehow or other try and accommodate the Vaishnavas, serve the Vaishnavas. That principle is there. Then practical, nobody has enough space to put the whole universe. It's gonna run out, and so everyone might come to practical limits. Then, as far as the specific example of Amsterdam, Amsterdam somehow or other went through a whole history, and once upon a time there was from a simple temple, like first Bijlmermeer, then it went to the Betanienstraat, a small, tiny place, to the Hare Gracht. And Hare Gracht was something. Yeah? That was not only big; it had style. I mean, that was a good temple, and it was not just high, but it was also, there was a sort of an extension at the back. It was quite deep, and it was much deeper than you would imagine. So it was like quite a place. Shame that it got lost, but okay. A lot of energy shifted towards Belgium, and we can see the fruits of that here. That's very, very nice. then they attempted to rebuild Amsterdam, but unfortunately the management was not expert enough and overextended with 20 devotees to 80 rooms. Anyone can tell you that that's going to be hard. It was too vulnerable, and when the situation became difficult, it collapsed. So then it went to 5 rooms, and with a tiny ashram. And I landed in that tiny ashram in '95 for a while, and it was like every square centimeter was being used. It was just like, no one could just put like a matchbox in some place, and someone said, are you claiming this space? You take your matchbox away, please? It's so tight. And then somehow or other we lost that place. And then by the service of some devotees, we got the current place, which is nice, but that's only a day center, where no one can reside. So that's not what Amsterdam needs. That's a temporary place. Amsterdam obviously is a bigger city. Prabhupada came there. It's a cosmopolitan place. It needs a substantial temple, yes, and maybe a restaurant, and maybe some cultural center, and all these things it needs. And until then, we can't sit around. So let's bring the cash.
How often do you know
Maybe not often enough. Just bring it. Bring us the cash. Any other question? Yes.
Thank you, Guru. We understand that from the story that we have to be selfless, to not put ourselves in this situation where you're selfish and you develop enviousness and lust. And we understand this. We're trying to be selfless, but we see that it doesn't happen overnight. So sometimes we're selfish and lust and envy develops in us, and in those moments, what can we do?
When lust and envy develops in a devotee, it should be like red lights should start flashing on the dashboard. And envy is a real problem that we have to check. Lust, we can channel it. We can, in a dharmic way, express our lust. We can enter the grihastha ashram, and so on and so on. But envy, we have to control it. And we have to turn it around by. And if we're envious towards a Vaishnava, we should serve that Vaishnava, we should give something to that Vaishnava, we should try to overcome it, see the good qualities of that Vaishnava. Envy cannot be dovetailed. Lust can be dovetailed. Dovetailed means engaged in the service of Krishna. Envy cannot. So we have to overcome this envious tendency very strongly. But it may still arise. That is the problem. We have to work on it. Thank you very, very much. And all the devotees from Bulgaria, thank you for joining us here in Radhadesh. It's very nice that you can all come. And we hope you're having a very good time here. And hope everything is okay. If you need something, let us know. And meanwhile,